What happens when an alpha king walks away from his own coronation? Tonight, you'll witness the moment Kyle Draven, strongest warrior in the Northern Territories, throws away everything his bloodline fought for. Not for glory, not for power, but for a girl the world wants dead. Stay until the end to see how a chained prisoner becomes the force that shatters a kingdom. If you're watching from New York, London, Tokyo, or anywhere in between, drop your city in the comments. And if this story grabs you, smash that like button. Let's begin. The ceremonial hall stank of incense and old stone. Kale Draven stood at the center of the dais, shoulders rigid beneath the weight of ancestral armor, while 300 nobles watched him with eyes that expected perfection. The crown, ancient, iron-forged, soaked in the blood of 7 generations, hovered inches from his head, held by Elder Thorn's gnarled hands. By the oath of fang and claw, Thorn intoned, his voice echoing off vaulted ceilings. By the strength of your bloodline and the will of the council, I name you. Kyle's breath caught. Not from pride, not from the weight of duty pressing down on him like a landslide, but from something else. A pull. Sharp. Violent. Undeniable. It clawed through his chest, yanked at something primal buried beneath his ribs. His wolf stirred. Not with aggression, but with recognition. The kind that made his vision blur at the edges and his pulse hammer against his skull. Alpha King of the Northern Territories, guardian of... Stop. The word left his mouth before his brain caught up. Thorn's hands froze. The crown hung midair, suspended in a moment that should have been sacred. Around the hall, gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through dry grass. Kale's second-in-command, Marcus, stepped forward. Your Majesty. Don't call me that yet. Kale's voice came out rougher than he intended. He turned, scanning the rows of silk-draped nobles, perfumed council members, and warriors who'd sworn fealty before he'd even earned it. None of them felt it. None of them knew. But he did. Beneath them. Deep below the throne room, something called to him with a frequency that rattled his bones. Kale. Thorn's tone sharpened. You will not dishonor this right. I'm not dishonoring anything. Kale stepped back from the crown, and the hall erupted in whispers. I'll return. But first... First? Counselor Vera rose from her seat, silver hair coiled like a serpent. There is no first in a coronation, boy. You accept the crown, or you forfeit your claim. Kale met her glare without flinching. Then I forfeit. Silence dropped like a guillotine. Marcus grabbed his arm. What the hell are you doing? Something's wrong. Kale jerked free, already moving toward the rear exit. There's something, beneath us. The lower chambers are sealed, Thorn snapped. They've been locked since your grandfather's reign. No one goes down there. Then why do I feel it? Kale's voice cracked with frustration. His wolf surged forward, pressing against his skin, demanding he move. Why does every instinct I have tell me I'm supposed to be down there right now? Vera's lips curled. Instinct is not law. You will return to this dais and accept. Kyle didn't wait for her to finish. He turned and bolted. The stairs spiraled downward in tight, suffocating loops. Kale took them 3 at a time, ignoring Marcus's shouts behind him and the thunder of boots as guards scrambled to follow. The stone walls pressed closer the deeper he went, slick with moisture and centuries of neglect. The air turned cold, stale, heavy with something that tasted like rust and rot. The pull intensified. His wolf howled inside him, clawing for release, but Kyle shoved it down. Not yet. Not until he knew what he was walking into. The staircase ended at an iron door. Massive, ancient, sealed with chains so old they'd fused to the metal. Kale grabbed the chains and pulled. They snapped like thread. Marcus skidded to a halt behind him. Kale, this is insane. Whatever's down here, it's been locked away for a reason. Then I'll deal with the reason. Kale slammed his shoulder into the door. It groaned, then gave way with a shriek of rusted hinges. Darkness swallowed him whole. He stepped inside. The chamber stretched wider than the throne room above, but where the hall had been filled with light and pageantry, this place was a tomb. Chains hung from the ceiling like dead vines. Cages lined the walls. empty now, but stained with things Kael didn't want to name. The floor was slick, uneven, carved with symbols he didn't recognize, and in the center of it all, chained to a stone pillar, was a girl. She didn't move when he entered, didn't flinch when his boots echoed across the floor. She just sat there, head bowed, dark hair matted and tangled, wrists bound in iron cuffs that glowed faintly with runes. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, like her body had forgotten how to pull in air properly. Kael stopped 3 feet away. His wolf went silent. Not out of fear, out of certainty. "No," Marcus whispered behind him. "No, no, no, Kael, step back. She's my mate." The words fell from Kael's mouth like stones into still water. Marcus grabbed his shoulder. "You don't know that." "I know." Kael shrugged him off, moving closer. The pull wasn't just in his chest anymore. It was everywhere. In his blood, his bones, the air he breathed. "I know the way I know my own heartbeat." The girl's head lifted, slowly, and Kael saw her eyes. Silver. Not the pale gray of wolves, not the warm brown of humans, but silver, glowing faintly in the darkness, like moonlight trapped beneath ice. She stared at him, and for the first time since he'd entered the chamber, she spoke, "You shouldn't be here." Her voice was ragged, broken, but underneath it something else hummed, a resonance that made the chains rattle and the runes flicker. Kael knelt in front of her. "Who did this to you?" She didn't answer. "How long have you been down here?" Still nothing. Kael reached for the chains. "Don't." Her voice sharpened. "If you touch those, they'll know. Let them know." Kael's fingers closed around the iron. The runes burned, searing his palms, but he didn't let go. "I don't care who locked you in here. I don't care why. You're coming with me." "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me after." Kael pulled. The chains resisted, thrumming with energy that felt wrong. Oily, sick, designed to contain something powerful. He pulled harder. His muscles screamed. The iron cut into his hands, and then the chain shattered. The girl gasped. The runes exploded in a flash of light, and she collapsed forward. Kael caught her before she hit the ground. She weighed almost nothing, skin stretched over bone, ribs sharp beneath his hands. "Marcus." Kael didn't look back. "Get a healer. Now." "Kael, if the council finds out." "Now." Marcus ran. Kael lifted the girl into his arms. She didn't fight, didn't protest, just stared at him with those silver eyes, wide and disbelieving. "What's your name?" Kael asked. She blinked, slowly, like the question didn't make sense. "Do you have a name?" Her lips moved, barely a whisper. "Lyra." The throne room exploded the moment Kael stepped through the doors. He ignored the shouting, ignored Veyra's screeches and Thorn's demands, and the guards who moved to block his path. He carried Lyra straight to the dais, laid her on the steps beneath the abandoned crown, and turned to face the council. "This," he said, voice steady despite the chaos, "is my mate." Dead silence. Then Veyra laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. "Your mate?" She descended from her seat, robes billowing like storm clouds. "That thing is an abomination, a Veilborn. Do you even know what that means?" Kael's jaw tightened. "Explain it." "They're parasites." Counselor Davin stepped forward, his face twisted with disgust. "Born from forbidden unions between wolves and shadow walkers. They don't belong to any bloodline. They corrupt everything they touch." "She was chained beneath our fortress," Kael shot back. "Who put her there?" No one answered. Kael's wolf snarled. "I asked a question." Thorn finally spoke. "Your grandfather. After the purge, survivors were contained for the safety of the kingdom." "Contained." Kael tasted bile. "You mean imprisoned." "They're dangerous. She's starving." Kael's voice cracked. "She's been down there for how long? Years? Decades? And you call that safety?" Veyra's expression hardened. "The law is clear. Veilborn are to be executed on sight. Your grandfather showed mercy by locking them away instead of slaughtering them outright." "That's not mercy." It's more than they deserve, Vetors. Vera gestured sharply. Guards, remove the creature. Prepare an execution. No! The word echoed through the hall. Kale stepped in front of Lyra, blocking the guard's path. If you want her, you go through me. Vera's smile turned cold. You would defy the council? For this? I would defy anyone who tries to kill my mate. You have no mate, Thorn snapped. You haven't even accepted the crown. Then I'll accept it now. Kale turned, grabbed the iron crown from where it still sat on the cushion, and jammed it onto his head. The metal bit into his skin, too tight, too heavy. There. I'm your Alpha King, and as Alpha King, I invoke the Bloodright Law. The council froze. Marcus groaned. Kale, no. The Bloodright Law states, Kale continued, his voice ringing clear, that an Alpha's mate cannot be harmed or exiled without trial, that her life is bound to his, and his authority supersedes the council's in matters of kinship. Vera's face went purple. That law hasn't been used in 200 years. Then it's time to dust it off. Kale met her glare without flinching. You want to execute her? Fine. But you'll have to prove she's a threat, in front of the entire kingdom, with witnesses, evidence, a fair trial. She's Veilborn. Then prove she's dangerous. Kale's voice dropped. Or admit you're afraid of something you don't understand. The hall erupted in arguments, counselors shouting over each other, guards shifting nervously. Kyle ignored them all. He turned back to Lyra, still lying on the steps, watching him with those unreadable silver eyes. Can you stand? He asked quietly. She didn't answer, just stared. I'm not going to let them hurt you, Kyle said. But you need to trust me. Can you do that? Lyra's gaze flicked past him, scanning the furious council, the armed guards, the crowd of nobles who looked at her like she was something scraped off their boots. Then, slowly, she nodded. Kyle helped her to her feet. She swayed, legs shaking, but she didn't fall. Kyle kept one arm around her waist, steadying her, and faced the council again. The trial begins tomorrow, he said. Until then, she stays with me. Vera's lip curled. You'll regret this. Maybe. Kale's grip on Lyra tightened. But I'll regret nothing more than walking away. Chab. They gave her a room in the east wing, not a cell. Kyle made that clear. A proper chamber with a bed, a window, and a door that locked from the inside. Marcus stationed guards outside, but Kyle ordered them to keep their distance. She's not a prisoner, he'd said. Treat her like anything else, and you answer to me. Now, hours later, Kale stood in the doorway and watched Lyra sit on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. The healers had cleaned her up, washed the grime from her skin, bandaged the raw wounds where the chains had bitten into her wrists. They'd tried to get her to eat, but she'd refused everything except water. You should rest, Kyle said. Lyra didn't look up. Why did you do it? Do what? Save me. Her voice was flat, hollow. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. You're my mate. That's not a reason. Kyle stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. It's the only reason that matters. Lyra finally looked at him. Her silver eyes were too bright, too sharp. You don't understand what I am. Then tell me. She laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. You think it's that simple? You think I can just explain it and you'll accept me? I already accept you. You don't. Lyra stood, unsteady but determined. You see a girl, a victim, something that needs saving, but I'm not... She stopped, breathing hard. I'm not safe, Kale. The council's right about that much. Kale crossed the room in 3 strides. I don't care. You should. I don't. He reached for her, but she stepped back. Lyra! They locked me down there for a reason, she said, her voice shaking. Do you know what happens when a Veilborn loses control? We don't just hurt people. We unmake them. We tear them apart from the inside out. And I've been locked in the dark for 17 years, Kyle. 17 years of nothing but hunger and silence, and her breath hitched. I don't know if I can control it anymore. Kale didn't move. Then we'll figure it out, together. You can't. I can. He closed the distance between them, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. You think I'm going to walk away because you're dangerous? Lyra, I just abandoned my own coronation in front of 300 witnesses. I broke into a forbidden chamber. I invoked a 200-year-old law and pissed off the entire council. If I was going to walk away, I would have done it already. Lyra stared at him. You're insane. Probably. Kael allowed himself a small smile. But I'm also your mate, and that means I'm not going anywhere. For a long moment she didn't respond. Then, slowly, her shoulders sagged. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Do what? Trust someone. Her voice cracked. I don't even know how to be human anymore. Kael reached out carefully and took her hand. Her fingers were cold, shaking, but she didn't pull away. Then we'll figure that out too, he said quietly. One step at a time. Lyra's eyes glistened. They're going to kill me. No. Kael's grip tightened. They're not, because I won't let them. You can't stop them forever. Watch me. The trial was set for dawn. Kael spent the night in his chambers, pacing, while Marcus tried to talk sense into him. This is a disaster, Marcus said for the 10th time. The council's going to tear her apart, and you along with her. They can try. Kael. Marcus grabbed his arm, forcing him to stop. I've known you since we were kids. I followed you into every stupid fight, every reckless plan. But this? This is different. You're not just risking your life. You're risking the entire kingdom. For my mate. For a girl you just met. She's not... Kael bit back the rest of the sentence, took a breath. It's not about how long I've known her, Marcus. It's about what I feel. And what I feel is... He stopped, searching for words that didn't sound insane. It's like I've been walking around with a piece of myself missing, and I didn't even know it until I saw her. Marcus stared at him. That's the mate bond talking. Maybe, but it's also the truth. Kael pulled free, resuming his pacing. I don't expect you to understand, but I need you to trust me. I do trust you. Marcus's voice softened. That's why I'm terrified. A knock at the door cut off Kael's response. He opened it to find a young guard, pale and nervous. Your Majesty. The guard stammered. The council requests your presence, immediately. Kael's jaw tightened. It's the middle of the night. They said it's urgent. The council chamber was lit by torches, casting flickering shadows across stone walls. Kael entered to find all 7 council members waiting. Vera stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, expression carved from ice. We've reconsidered, she said without preamble. Kael stopped. Reconsidered what? The trial. Thorne stepped forward. It's unnecessary, a waste of time and resources. You wanted to execute her yesterday, and we still believe that's the correct course of action, Vera said smoothly. But you've invoked the blood right law. We cannot ignore that, so we're offering a compromise. Kael's instincts screamed warning. What kind of compromise? A test. Counselor Davin unfurled a scroll. The Veilborn will undergo the rite of cleansing. If she survives, we'll acknowledge her as your mate. If she fails, he shrugged, the problem solves itself. What's the rite of cleansing? Silence. Marcus, standing behind Kael, swore under his breath. It's a death sentence, he said flatly. They bind the subject with silver chains and force them to withstand wolfsbane poison for 24 hours. No food, no water, no relief. Most wolves don't survive it, let alone a Veilborn. Vera's smile was sharp. But if she's truly your mate, if the bond is real, she should be able to endure it, shouldn't she? Kael's hands clenched into fists. You're insane. We're cautious, Bran. Thorne's tone was mild. The rite has been used for centuries to test loyalty, strength, and purity. If she passes, no one can question her right to stand beside you. And if she dies? Then she wasn't strong enough to be your queen. Vera leaned forward. Isn't that what you want, Kael? A mate who can survive anything? Who can stand beside you without breaking? Kael's wolf snarled. pressing against his ribs, demanding he tear them apart. But he forced it down, forced himself to think. If he refused, they'd use it against him, claim he didn't trust Lyra's strength, claim he knew she'd fail. If he agreed, she might die, but she might also prove them all wrong. I want to speak to her first, Kyle said. Vera waved a hand. Of course. The rite begins at sunrise. You have until then. Kale found Lyra standing by the window in her chamber, staring out at the pre-dawn darkness. She didn't turn when he entered. They want to test you, Kyle said quietly. I know. Her voice was calm, too calm. I heard the guards talking. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Lyra finally turned to face him. Her silver eyes were clear, steady. If I don't, they'll never stop. They'll find another way to kill me, and they'll use it against you. I don't care. I do. She crossed the room, stopping in front of him. You gave up your crown for me, Kyle. You broke every rule. I'm not going to let that be for nothing. Lyra, I'll survive. Her jaw set. I've survived worse. Kale searched her face. The rite of cleansing isn't... I know what it is. Her voice hardened. Silver chains. Wolfsbane, pain designed to break you from the inside out. I spent 17 years in chains, Kyle. I think I can handle one more day. Kale wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she didn't have to prove anything. But he saw the determination in her eyes, the steel beneath the exhaustion. She wasn't doing this because she had to. She was doing it because she wanted to. Okay, Kyle said finally, but I'm staying with you. They won't allow I don't care what they allow. Kale stepped closer. You're my mate. If you're going through this, then so am I. Lyra stared at him. Then, slowly, she smiled. It was small, fragile, but real. You really are insane, she said softly. Good thing you're stuck with me. Sunrise came too fast. They bound Lyra in the center of the throne room, silver chains wrapped around her wrists, ankles, and throat. The metal burned on contact, searing her skin, but she didn't scream, didn't flinch. She just stood there, head high, as the healers approached with vials of wolfsbane extract. Kale stood 3 feet away, every muscle locked tight, while Marcus held him back. You can't interfere, Marcus hissed. If you do, they'll claim she failed. I know. Kale's voice was strangled. I know. The healer uncorked the first vial. Drink, Vera commanded. Lyra met Kale's eyes, and she drank. The poison hit her system like liquid fire. Her body convulsed, silver chains rattling as she gasped. Veins darkened beneath her skin, spreading from her throat down her arms, across her chest. Her eyes flickered, silver to black to silver again. But she didn't fall. Again, Vera said. The healer offered a second vial. Lyra drank. This time, her knees buckled. The chains caught her, holding her upright, cutting deeper into her skin. Blood dripped onto the stone floor, dark and wrong. Kale lunged forward. Marcus grabbed him. Don't! She's dying. She's fighting. Marcus's grip tightened. Let her fight. Kale forced himself to watch, to bear witness. Lyra raised her head, gasping, and locked eyes with him again. I can do this, her expression said. Trust me. Kale nodded. I trust you. The hours dragged, vial after vial. The poison flooded her system, turning her veins black, making her skin burn. The silver chains glowed white-hot, searing into her flesh. She shook, bled, gasped for air that wouldn't come, but she didn't break. And as the sun climbed higher, something changed. The darkness spreading through her veins began to shift. The black didn't disappear. It transformed, turning silver, luminous, like light trapped beneath her skin. The chains stopped burning. Lyra's breathing steadied, and when she opened her eyes, they blazed pure silver, bright enough to cast shadows. The throne room went silent. Vera stared, mouth open. Thorn stepped back, fear flashing across his face. And Lyra smiled. Not a broken, fragile thing, but something fierce, unshakable. Is that all you've got? She rasped. They removed the chains at sunset. Lyra collapsed the moment the silver fell away, and Kael caught her before she hit the ground. He carried her out of the throne room, ignoring the council's stunned silence, ignoring the whispers that followed them. She'd survived. Not just survived, she'd transformed. In the privacy of her chamber, Kael laid her on the bed and finally let himself breathe. "You did it," he said, voice rough. Lyra's eyes fluttered open. "Told you." Kael laughed. It came out shaky, unsteady. "You're terrifying. Good." She smiled weakly. "Maybe they'll leave me alone now." Kael brushed a strand of hair from her face. "They'd better." Lyra's hand found his. "Thank you." "For what?" "For believing I could do it." Her grip tightened. "No one's ever believed in me before." Kael leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers. "Then they were fools." For a moment they just stayed like that. Two broken people holding each other together. And outside, the kingdom began to shift, because the girl they'd tried to destroy had done the impossible. She'd survived. And in doing so, she'd planted a seed that would grow into something unstoppable. The whispers started before Lyra could even walk without stumbling. 3 days after the rite, Kael found graffiti scrawled across the fortress walls in charcoal. "Monster Queen." The servants who'd been assigned to Lyra's chamber requested transfers. Guards shifted their posts to avoid passing her door. And in the great hall, conversations died the moment she entered. She pretended not to notice. Kael noticed everything. "They're afraid," Marcus said, watching Lyra cross the courtyard from the second-floor balcony. She moved slowly, still recovering, but her silver eyes caught the sunlight in a way that made people flinch. "Can't say I blame them. What she did during the rite, that wasn't normal." "She survived poison that would have killed 10 wolves," Kael said flatly. "That's not monstrous. That's strength. Strength that glows in the dark and turns veins black." Marcus shot him a look. "You saw what happened to the chains. They melted, Kael. Silver doesn't just melt. She didn't ask for any of this." "I know," Marcus sighed. "But that doesn't change how people see her, or what the council's planning." Kael's jaw tightened. "What are they planning?" "Another meeting, tonight. Thorne's calling it a discussion about integration, but Vera's been gathering votes all week." Marcus hesitated. "They're going to push for exile, maybe worse. She passed their test, and they're terrified of what that means." Marcus turned to face him fully. "Think about it. A Veilborn who can withstand Wolfsbane, who can turn poison into power. That's not something they can control. And control is all they care about." Kael's hands curled into fists. "Then I'll remind them who's in charge. You're the Alpha King, but you're also 19 years old, barely crowned, and publicly bonded to someone the entire kingdom was raised to fear." Marcus's voice softened. "They don't have to kill her, Kael. They just have to make you choose between her and the throne." "Then they don't know me very well." "That's what I'm afraid of." The council met in a windowless chamber deep in the fortress, lit by oil lamps that cast everything in shades of amber and shadow. Kael arrived early, Lyra at his side, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Vera's eyes narrowed. "You brought her." "She's my mate," Kael said evenly. "She has a right to hear what you're planning." "This is a closed session, and I'm the Alpha King." Kael pulled out a chair for Lyra, ignoring the way Counselor Davin recoiled. "If you want me here, she stays." Vera's smile was razor-thin. "As you wish." They sat. Lyra kept her hands folded in her lap, expression blank, but Kael caught the tension in her shoulders. He shifted closer, a silent reminder. "I'm here. You're not alone." Thorne cleared his throat. "We've gathered to discuss the situation. The Veilborn has passed the rite. That much is undeniable, but her presence raises questions we cannot ignore." "Questions like what?" Kael asked. "Like what happens when others of her kind learn she's alive," Davin said. "The Purge eliminated most Veilborn, but not all. If word spreads that one survived, and thrived, what's to stop them from rallying? From returning?" They were slaughtered, Lyra said quietly. Every head turned. Excuse me? Vera's tone dripped ice. Lyra lifted her chin. You said eliminated. The word you're looking for is slaughtered. Women, children, anyone with even a trace of Valeborn blood. My mother was human. My father was... She stopped, jaw working. It didn't matter. They killed her anyway, in front of me. Silence pressed down like a weight. That's unfortunate, Thorne said carefully. But it doesn't change the fact that you're murderers? Lyra's voice stayed level, but her eyes blazed. That you justify genocide by calling it a purge? That you locked survivors in cages and let them starve rather than face what you'd done? We protected the kingdom. From what? Lyra stood, and the lamps flickered. From people who were different? From power you didn't understand? My mother baked bread. She sang to me at night. She never hurt anyone. And you murdered her because she loved the wrong person. Vera slammed her hand on the table. Your kind. My kind didn't start a war, Lyra shot back. You did. And now you're afraid because you can't kill me as easily as you killed them. The room erupted. Counselors shouted over each other, voices rising in accusations and defenses. Kale stood, placing himself between Lyra and the table, but she stepped around him. I'm not here to beg for your approval, she said, cutting through the noise. I'm here because Kyle asked me to be. But let's be clear. I don't owe you anything. Not my compliance, not my silence, and definitely not my fear. You dare! I survived 17 years in your dungeon, Lyra continued, her voice sharp enough to draw blood. 17 years of darkness and chains and slow starvation. If you think a room full of bureaucrats scares me, you're more delusional than I thought. Vera's face turned purple. Guards! Touch her and I'll tear this fortress apart stone by stone, Kyle said quietly. The room went still. Kale met Vera's glare without flinching. You wanted to test her. She passed. By your own laws, she's earned her place. If you can't accept that, then the problem isn't her. It's you. You would choose her over the stability of the kingdom? Thorne demanded. I would choose what's right over what's convenient. Kale's voice hardened. And what's right is acknowledging that the purge was a mistake. That locking people in cages because you're afraid of them is cowardice, not protection. Careful, boy, Vera hissed. You're treading dangerous ground. Then arrest me. Kale spread his arms. Go ahead, strip my title, exile me. But if you do, you'll prove that this council cares more about power than justice, and the people will notice. No one moved. Kyle lowered his arms. Lyra stays. She's my mate, and she's under my protection. Anyone who disagrees can challenge me for the crown. Otherwise, this conversation is over. He turned, took Lyra's hand, and walked out. The council didn't stop them. But as they left, Kale heard Vera's voice, low and venomous. This isn't over. They made it halfway across the courtyard before Lyra stopped. You shouldn't have done that, she said. Kale turned. Done what? Threatened them, backed them into a corner. She pulled her hand free, wrapping her arms around herself. Now they'll see you as weak, someone controlled by his mate. I don't care. You should. Lyra's voice cracked. You're the Alpha King, Kale. You can't afford to look weak. Not for me. Lyra, I'm serious. She stepped back, eyes bright with something Kyle couldn't name. I've already cost you your coronation, your reputation. If I cost you the throne too, then I'll build a new one. Kyle closed the distance between them. With you. That's not how this works. Then I'll make it work. Kyle cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. You think I care about their approval? Their rules? I didn't break you out of that cage so you could spend the rest of your life apologizing for existing. Lyra stared at him, breathing hard. You don't understand what you're risking. I understand perfectly. Kale's thumb brushed her cheek. And I'm choosing you anyway. For a moment she didn't respond. Then she leaned into his touch, eyes closing. You're going to regret this. Never. Down. The attack came 3 days later. Kale was in the training yard running drills with Marcus and a squad of young recruits when the alarm bells shattered the afternoon calm. He dropped his practice sword and ran, Marcus at his heels, toward the source of the commotion. The East Wing. Lyra's wing. Kale's blood turned to ice. He hit the corridor at full speed, skidding around corners, boots pounding stone. Guards lay slumped against walls, unconscious but breathing. Doors hung open, rooms ransacked, and at the end of the hall, Lyra's door stood splintered, hanging from one hinge. Kale burst through. The room was a war zone, furniture overturned, curtains torn. Scorch marks scorched the walls in patterns that looked like claw marks. And in the center of the chaos, Lyra knelt on the floor, hands pressed to her temples, shaking violently. 3 figures in dark cloaks surrounded her. Kale's wolf exploded forward. He shifted mid-stride, bones cracking, muscles tearing and reforming, his clothes shredded, fur erupted across his skin. And by the time he hit the first attacker, he was fully wolf, massive, black-furred, eyes blazing gold. He tore the first cloaked figure apart before they could scream. The second turned, raising a hand wreathed in shadow, but Kyle was faster. He clamped his jaws around their throat and ripped. The third bolted for the window. Kyle lunged and slammed into an invisible barrier. Pain exploded through his skull. He yelped, falling back, vision blurring. The third figure leapt through the window and vanished into the night. Kale shifted back to human form, gasping, and scrambled to Lyra's side. "Are you hurt?" He grabbed her shoulders, searching for injuries. "Lyra, talk to me." She wasn't looking at him. She was staring at the bodies, at what was left of them. "I killed them," she whispered. Kyle followed her gaze. The 2 attackers he'd taken down were wrong. Their bodies hadn't just been torn apart. They'd been unmade. Flesh dissolved into ash, bones blackened and crumbling, like they'd been burned from the inside out. But Kyle hadn't used fire. "Lyra? They touched me." Her voice was distant, hollow. "They grabbed me, and I didn't mean to. It's okay. It's not okay." She jerked away from him, stumbling to her feet. "I felt it, Kale. The power. It wanted to consume them, and I let it. You were defending yourself. I wanted them dead." Her eyes blazed silver, bright enough to hurt. "I felt them die, and I was glad." Kyle stood slowly. "They attacked you. You had every right." "Did I?" Lyra's laugh was jagged. "Or did I just prove the council right, that I'm a monster who can't control her own power?" "You're not a monster. Look at them." She gestured wildly at the bodies. "Look what I did." Kale looked, and he saw exactly what the council would see. Proof that Lyra was dangerous, unstable, everything they'd feared. Marcus appeared in the doorway, took one look at the scene, and swore. "What the hell happened?" "Assassins," Kyle said flatly. 3 of them. 1 escaped. Marcus stepped over the bodies, careful not to touch the ash. "Who sent them?" "Does it matter?" Lyra's voice was bitter. "The council will use this against me. They'll say I'm too dangerous to live in the fortress, that I need to be locked up again." "No one's locking you up," Kale said. "You can't stop them." "Watch me." Kale turned to Marcus. "Lock down the fortress. No one in or out until we find that 3rd assassin. And get the bodies out of here before..." "Before what?" Vera's voice cut through the room like a blade. Kale's stomach dropped. The counselor stood in the doorway, flanked by guards, staring at the carnage with an expression of vindicated horror. "Before you see this and jump to conclusions," Kyle said carefully. Vera's smile was poisonous. "Too late." They convened in the throne room within the hour. Kale refused to let them take Lyra to a cell, so she stood beside him on the dais while the full council assembled. Word had spread fast. The hall filled with nobles, guards, servants, everyone who could squeeze through the doors. The air thrummed with tension and fear. Vera didn't waste time. 3 attackers entered the fortress, she announced, her voice carrying to the back of the hall. They infiltrated the East Wing and targeted the Veilborn. 2 are dead. The manner of their deaths, she paused for effect, speaks for itself. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. She defended herself, Kale said loudly. They attacked her in her own room, and she unmade them, Vera interrupted. Not killed, not wounded, unmade, as if they'd never existed. That kind of power saved her life, Kyle shot back. Or would you prefer she died quietly? I would prefer, Vera said icily, that we not harbor something capable of dissolving people with a touch. The crowd erupted in shouts. Kyle raised his voice. The assassins were sent by someone in this room. Silence crashed down. Think about it, Kyle continued, scanning the sea of faces. Who benefits from Lyra's death? Who's been pushing for her exile since the moment she passed the rite? Someone hired those assassins. Someone wanted her dead. And when she survived, they're using it as proof she's dangerous. Vera's expression didn't flicker. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. Kale's wolf snarled beneath his skin. And until we find out who sent them, Lyra stays under my protection. End of discussion. It's not your decision to make, Thorn said quietly. Kale turned to him. I'm the Alpha King, and we are the Council. Thorn's voice hardened. The kingdom cannot function if its ruler prioritizes personal attachments over public safety. The Veilborn has proven she's a threat, not through malice perhaps, but through sheer, uncontrollable power. She controlled it, Kale argued. She could have destroyed the entire wing. She didn't. This time, Davin interjected. But what about next time? What happens when she's angry? Frightened? What happens when she loses control in a crowded market? A feast hall? The training yard? That won't happen. You don't know that. Vera slammed her hand on the table. None of us do. And we cannot risk the lives of thousands based on your faith in a girl you've known for less than 2 weeks. Kale opened his mouth to respond, and Lyra stepped forward. She's right. The room went silent. Kale grabbed her arm. Lyra, don't. No. She pulled free, facing the council with her head high. Vera's right. You don't know what I'm capable of. I don't even know. But I can prove it. Vera's eyes narrowed. Prove what? That I can control it. Lyra's voice was steady. Give me a task. A test. Something that proves I'm not a threat. If I pass, you leave me alone. If I fail, she swallowed. Then you can do whatever you want. Lyra, no. It's the only way, Kyle. She looked at him, silver eyes pleading. If I don't do this, they'll never stop, and you'll keep fighting battles you can't win. Kyle wanted to argue, wanted to drag her out of the throne room and run until the kingdom was a memory. But he saw the determination in her face, the same steel that had carried her through the rite. She wasn't asking permission, she was telling him. Vera exchanged glances with the other counselors. What kind of test? You choose, Lyra said. I don't care. Just make it something that proves I'm not a danger to innocent people. A slow smile spread across Vera's face, and Kyle's blood ran cold. Very well, Vera said. We have reports of Veilborn activity in the southern forests. Refugees, possibly, or criminals. We're not sure. But if you can track them down, assess the threat, and return without incident, she shrugged. That would demonstrate remarkable control. Done, Lyra said. Alone. Lyra hesitated. What? You'll go alone, Vera repeated. No guards. No escort. Just you. If you're truly in control, you won't need protection. And if you're not, her smile widened. Well, the problem solves itself. But that's insane, Kale snarled. The southern forests are crawling with rogues. Then she'll have plenty of opportunities to prove herself. Vera turned to Lyra. What do you say, Veilborn? Do we have a deal? Lyra didn't flinch. We do. No. Kyle grabbed her shoulder, spinning her to face him. This is a trap. They're sending you out there to die. Maybe. Lyra's voice was soft. But it's my choice. Lyra, I have to do this, Kyle. She cupped his face, and for a moment the throne room disappeared. If I don't, you'll spend the rest of your life fighting for me. And I won't let you destroy yourself for someone you barely know. I know enough. Then trust me. Her thumb brushed his jaw. Trust that I can do this. Kyle wanted to refuse, wanted to forbid it, but he saw the resolve in her eyes, the same fire that had kept her alive through 17 years of darkness. She wasn't asking for his permission. She was asking for his faith. Fine, he said hoarsely, but I'm sending Marcus with you. Alone, Feyre said sharply. Marcus stays at the forest edge, Kyle countered. Out of sight. He won't interfere, but if something goes wrong... Nothing will go wrong, Lyra said. But if it does, Kyle continued, ignoring her, he'll be there. Feyre's jaw tightened, but after a long pause she nodded. Fine. The Veilborn leaves at dawn. She has 3 days to find the refugees, assess the threat, and return. If she's not back by sunset on the 3rd day, she smiled coldly, we'll assume the worst. Kael followed Lyra back to her chamber, his mind racing. This is a mistake, he said the moment the door closed. It's the only option. Lyra started gathering supplies, a pack, a cloak, a knife she didn't know how to use. They're hoping you fail. I know. Lyra, Kael, stop. She turned, eyes blazing. I'm not some fragile thing that needs protecting. I survived the right. I survived assassins. I can survive 3 days in a forest. The southern forests aren't just trees, Kael argued. They're full of rogues, wild packs, things that hunt in the dark. Things like me? Lyra's voice was quiet. Kael stopped. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? She set the pack down, shoulders sagging. I'm a Veilborn, Kael. Darkness is what I am. Maybe the forest is exactly where I belong. You belong here. With me. Do I? Lyra's laugh was bitter. Look around. The servants won't come near me. The guards request transfers. Even Marcus looks at me like I'm a bomb waiting to go off. The only person who doesn't see me as a monster is you. And that's not enough. It's enough for me. It shouldn't be. Lyra's voice cracked. You're the Alpha King. You're supposed to put the kingdom first. I am putting the kingdom first, Kael said fiercely. Because you're part of it now. And if I let the council bully you into exile, into silence, into making yourself smaller so they feel safe, then what kind of king am I? Lyra stared at him. The kind who survives. I don't want to survive, Inki. Kael closed the distance between them. I want to build something better. Something where people like you aren't hunted, aren't feared, where mates aren't seen as weaknesses. That's a nice dream. Then help me make it real. Kael took her hands. Come back in 3 days, prove them wrong, and then we'll tear this kingdom down and rebuild it piece by piece. For a long moment, Lyra didn't respond. Then, slowly, she nodded. 3 days, she whispered. 3 days, Kael echoed. Dawn came gray and cold. Kael watched from the fortress gates as Lyra disappeared into the tree line, Marcus trailing 100 yards behind. She didn't look back, didn't wave, just walked into the shadows like she belonged there. And maybe she did, but Kael refused to believe she belonged there alone. He turned to the guard beside him. Get me a horse and a map of the southern forests. The guard blinked. Your Majesty, the council said, I don't care what the council said. Kael's voice was steel. My mate just walked into a death trap. If you think I'm staying here while she's in danger, you're insane. But the agreement didn't include me. Kael's smile was sharp. Now get me that horse, or I'll find one myself. The guard hesitated, then bolted. Marcus appeared at Kael's side, breathing hard. You're really going after her? What did you think I'd do? Sit here and wait? I thought you'd trust her. I do trust her. Kael's hands clenched. I don't trust the council, or whoever sent those assassins, or the forest, or... He stopped, jaw working. She's my mate, Marcus. If something happens to her, then we'll deal with it together. Marcus clapped his shoulder. But right now, you need to let her do this. She needs to prove, to herself more than anyone, that she's not what they say she is. Kael closed his eyes. And if she doesn't come back? Then we burn the kingdom down looking for her. Despite everything, Kael smiled. You're a terrible influence. I learned from the best. Lyra made it 6 miles before the first attack. She was crossing a stream, boots soaked, when something slammed into her from the side. She hit the water hard, gasping, and rolled just in time to avoid teeth snapping where her throat had been. A wolf, massive, gray-furred, eyes wild with hunger, rogue. Lyra scrambled back, hands raised. I don't want to fight. The wolf lunged again. Lyra's power flared instinctively. Silver light erupted from her palms, and the wolf yelped, skidding to a stop. It circled her, growling, but didn't attack again. I'm just passing through, Lyra said, keeping her voice steady. I'm not here to hurt anyone. The wolf's growl deepened, and then it shifted. Bones cracked, fur receded. Within seconds, a man stood where the wolf had been, gaunt, scarred, eyes hollow with desperation. You're Veilborn, he rasped. Lyra tensed. Yes, they said you were dead, all of you. Not all. The man laughed bitterly. Lucky you. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the trees. Lyra stood there, dripping, heart pounding, and for the first time she wondered if the council had been right. Maybe she was dangerous, not because of what she could do, but because of what she represented. Hope. And hope, she was learning, was the most dangerous thing of all. Hope, Lyra decided, was a blade that cut both ways. She walked deeper into the southern forests, boots squelching through mud and dead leaves, and every mile brought more faces. They appeared from between trees like ghosts, thin, hollow-eyed, wrapped in clothes that had rotted to rags. Some were wolves, some were human. Most were something in between, their features twisted by starvation and years of hiding. Veilborn, all of them. You're really her, a woman whispered, stepping into Lyra's path. She couldn't have been older than 30, but her hair was white, her skin mapped with scars. The one who survived the rite. Lyra stopped. How do you know about that? Word spreads. The woman's smile was brittle. Even out here. Especially out here. They say you stood in front of the council and didn't break. That you drank wolfsbane like water and came out glowing. It wasn't that simple. It never is. The woman moved closer, and Lyra caught the sharp scent of desperation. But you're alive. You're free. That's more than any of us can say. Lyra looked past her, into the shadows where more figures waited. Dozens of them, maybe more, all watching her with expressions that made her chest tighten. They weren't just curious, they were hoping. How many of you are there? Lyra asked quietly. In these woods? Maybe 60? Across the territories? The woman shrugged. Hundreds? Maybe thousands. We scatter when the patrols come, hide when they burn the camps. But we survive. And you all came here because you proved it's possible. The woman's voice cracked. To stand in front of them and win. We've been running for so long, we forgot what that looked like. Lyra's throat closed. I didn't win. I just didn't die. Same thing to us. A child emerged from the trees, a girl no older than 8, silver eyes wide and scared. She clutched a wooden doll missing one arm and stared at Lyra like she was something out of a story. Are you going to help us? The girl asked. Lyra knelt, bringing herself to eye level. What's your name? Mira. Mira, Lyra stopped, searching for words that wouldn't shatter the fragile hope in the girl's face. I'm not here to help. I'm here to see if you're a threat. The woman laughed bitterly. A threat? Look at us. Half of us can't even shift anymore. We're barely surviving. What threat could we possibly be? That's what I need to report back. Lyra stood, hating the weight of the words. The council sent me to decide if we're worth killing. The woman's expression hardened. We know. We've heard this before. But you're one of us. You understand what it's like to be hunted, to be caged. Her voice dropped. You won't turn us in. It wasn't a question. It was a plea wrapped in certainty, and Lyra felt the trap close around her. She spent the first night in a clearing where the refugees had built a camp from scavenged wood and stolen canvas. Fires burned low, just enough to keep the cold at bay without drawing attention. Children huddled together for warmth. Adults kept watch, eyes scanning the darkness for threats that never stopped coming. Lyra sat apart from them, back against a tree, and tried not to feel the weight of their stares. A man approached, older, maybe 50, with a limp that suggested an old injury never properly healed. "You planning to eat?" He offered her a wooden bowl filled with something that might have been soup once. It smelled like wet dirt and desperation. "I'm fine," Lyra said. "You're not." He sat beside her anyway, groaning as his knee popped. "No one's fine out here, but we share what we have. That's how we survive." Lyra took the bowl. The soup tasted worse than it smelled, but she forced it down. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." The man stared into the fire. "You're going back to them, aren't you? The wolves, the council." "I have to. And you'll tell them we're here." Lyra's hands tightened on the bowl. "I don't know what I'm going to tell them." "Yes, you do." The man's voice was gentle, but his eyes were hard. "You'll tell them we're harmless, that we're not a threat. And they'll send soldiers anyway, because that's what they do. That's what they've always done. The Alpha King is one man." The man turned to face her fully. "One man who's already risking everything for you. How much more can you ask him to sacrifice? His crown? His kingdom? His life?" Lyra didn't answer, because she didn't have one. The man stood, joints creaking. "My daughter was 8 when they came for us. She had silver eyes like yours, like Mira's. They didn't care that she'd never hurt anyone. Didn't care that she was just a child. They dragged her out of our house and—" His voice broke. "I ran. I'm still running, but she's gone." He walked away, leaving Lyra alone with the fire and the ghosts of choices she hadn't made yet. The attack came on the second night. Lyra woke to screams and the smell of smoke. She rolled to her feet, heart hammering, and saw flames tearing through the camp. Tents burned, people scattered, running in every direction while shadows moved between the trees, too fast to be human, too coordinated to be rogues. Soldiers. Lyra's power flared instinctively, silver light crackling across her skin. She ran toward the center of the chaos, where a group of veil-born children huddled together, surrounded by armed wolves. "Stop!" Lyra shouted. The lead soldier turned, face hidden behind a helmet. "Stand down, Veilborn. This doesn't concern you. These people are under my protection. These people are criminals." The soldier gestured sharply, and his squad advanced. "By order of the council, all Veilborn found in the southern forests are to be detained. Resisting will be met with lethal force. They're refugees. They're enemies of the kingdom." The soldier raised his sword. "Step aside or we'll assume you're one of them." Lyra's power surged, bright enough to cast shadows. "I said stop." The soldier hesitated. And in that moment, chaos erupted. The refugees fought back, not with weapons, but with the same power that had gotten them hunted in the first place. Silver light exploded through the camp. Soldiers screamed as their armor turned molten. Trees shattered under waves of force. And in the center of it all, little Mira stood with her hands raised, tears streaming down her face, as 2 soldiers crumbled to ash at her feet. "No!" Lyra lunged forward, grabbing the girl and pulling her back. "Mira, stop!" But it was too late. The damage was done. The soldiers saw what they'd come to see, proof that Veilborn were dangerous, uncontrollable, monstrous. And they responded the only way they knew how, with violence. Lyra threw herself in front of the children, power blazing, and caught the first sword strike on a shield of solid light. The impact rattled her bones, but she held. The second strike came from the side. She deflected it, barely. The third, something slammed into her from behind. Lyra hit the ground hard, vision blurring. Boots surrounded her. Steel glinted in the firelight. She tried to rise, tried to summon her power, but exhaustion clawed at her. 2 days of walking, no real food, no rest. She was out of strength. A blade pressed against her throat. "Enough," the lead soldier said. "You're under arrest for aiding enemies of the crown. You'll be taken back to the fortress and—" A roar split the night. The soldiers turned, and Kael Draven, in full wolf form, tore through them like paper. He'd followed her. Of course he had. Lyra watched through hazy vision as Kael ripped through the soldiers, all black fur and fury and impossible speed. Marcus appeared beside him, human but armed, cutting down anyone who got too close. The remaining soldiers broke, scattering into the forest, leaving their dead behind. Kyle shifted back to human form, naked and breathing hard, and dropped to his knees beside Lyra. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over her, checking for wounds. "Lyra, talk to me." "You shouldn't be here," she rasped. "Shut up." Cale pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "You think I was going to let you walk into this alone? The council can burn for all I care." Cale pulled back, cupping her face. "You're bleeding. Marcus, get the med kit." "I'm fine." Lyra pushed his hands away, forcing herself to stand. Her legs shook, but she locked her knees. "The children, where are they?" "Safe." Marcus appeared, hauling a pack. "For now. But we need to move. Those soldiers will report back, and when they do, the council will send more," Lyra finished. She looked around the burning camp, at the bodies scattered like broken dolls, at the refugees emerging from hiding with terror carved into their faces. And she made a choice. "We're not running," she said. Cale stared at her. "What?" "We're not running," Lyra repeated louder. She turned to face the refugees, raising her voice so everyone could hear. "The council sent me here to decide if you're a threat. Well, I've decided. You're not. You're survivors. And you deserve better than hiding in the woods waiting to die." "Lyra," Kyle said carefully, "what are you doing?" "What I should have done from the start." Lyra's power flickered, weak but steady. "I'm going back to the fortress, and I'm taking all of you with me." Silence. Then the white-haired woman laughed. "You're insane. They'll kill us the moment we step through those gates." "They'll try," Lyra agreed, "but they'll have to go through me first. And Kael, and anyone else who's tired of watching innocent people die. This is suicide. So is staying here." Lyra's voice hardened. "How long do you think you'll last? Another year, 2? Eventually they'll find you. They always do. But if we go to them, if we show them you're not monsters, that you're just people trying to survive, maybe we can change something. Or maybe we all die," the man who'd lost his daughter said quietly. "Maybe." Lyra met his gaze. "But at least we'll die fighting." The refugees exchanged glances. Fear, doubt. But underneath it, something else. The same thing Lyra had seen in little Mira's eyes. Hope. "I'm in," the white-haired woman said finally. "Me too," someone else added. One by one, voices rose from the darkness, until every refugee in the camp had agreed. Cale grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her aside. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" "Yes. The council will see this as an invasion. Let them." Lyra's eyes blazed. "I'm done playing by their rules. I'm done letting them decide who deserves to live. If they want a war, I'll give them one." "Lyra, you said you wanted to build something better," she interrupted. "This is how we start, not by hiding, not by running, but by standing up and making them see us as people." Kael stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was fierce, dangerous, the kind of smile that started revolutions. "You're absolutely insane, Ose," he said. "I learned from the best." They marched at dawn. 60 Veilborn, 1 Alpha King, and a single warrior who'd decided following his best friend into hell was preferable to watching from the sidelines. Marcus took point, scouting ahead, while Kael and Lyra walked at the center of the group. The refugees moved quietly, fear and determination warring on their faces. Children clung to adults. The injured leaned on the strong. And at the very back, the white-haired woman carried little Mira, whispering reassurances that sounded more like prayers. They covered 20 miles the first day, 30 the second. By the third day, they could see the fortress in the distance, a dark shape against gray sky, all stone and iron and centuries of blood. And waiting at the gates was an army. Kael stopped. Lyra's stomach dropped. "They knew we were coming," Marcus said flatly. "Of course they did. The soldiers who'd escaped the camp must have reported back, and the council had done what they always did, prepared for war." 300 wolves lined the approach to the fortress, armed and armored, with Vera at the front. She stood on a raised platform, robes billowing in the wind, and even from a distance, Lyra could see her smile. "She's been waiting for this," Kael muttered. "Then let's not disappoint her." Lyra stepped forward. Kael grabbed her hand. "Wait. For what?" "For me to figure out how to get you out of this alive." Lyra squeezed his fingers. "I'm not running, Kael. Not anymore. I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to let me help." "You are helping." She leaned up, pressing her forehead to his, "just by being here." Behind them, the refugees shifted nervously. Whispers rippled through the group. Lyra could feel their fear like a physical weight, but she could also feel something else, a hum, deep and resonant, vibrating through her bones. It wasn't coming from the fortress, or the army, or the refugees. It was coming from beneath them. Lyra froze. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. Kael's eyes narrowed. "Feel what?" The hum intensified. The ground trembled. And somewhere deep underground, something woke. Lyra's power flared, not silver this time, but black, dark as the void, dark as the 17 years she'd spent in chains. And she understood. The fortress wasn't just built on stone, it was built on a prison. They'd lied about the purge. Not about the killing, that part was true. But they'd lied about the numbers, about how many Veilborn had actually died because they hadn't killed them all. They'd locked them beneath the fortress, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, buried so deep that no one remembered they existed. Until now. "Kael," Lyra said, voice shaking, "we need to get everyone away from here right now." "What? Why?" The ground split open, not a crack, not a fissure, a chasm. It tore through the earth like a wound, stretching from the fortress gates to where they stood, swallowing soldiers who didn't move fast enough. Screams filled the air. Vera's platform collapsed, and from the darkness below, shapes began to rise. People. Veilborn. But wrong. They climbed from the chasm with movements that didn't quite match human anatomy, skin pale and stretched, eyes empty. They didn't speak, didn't scream, just climbed, dragging themselves into the light for the first time in decades. And they were hungry. The first one reached a soldier, touched him. And the soldier dissolved, armor and all, reduced to ash in seconds. Chaos erupted. The army broke ranks, scattering as more Veilborn emerged. Kael shifted, roaring orders that no one could hear over the screaming. Marcus grabbed the nearest refugees, shoving them toward the tree line, and Lyra stood frozen, staring into the chasm, because she recognized them, not individually, but the feeling they radiated, the hollow, aching emptiness of 17 years in darkness. They were her, what she could have become, what she still might become if she let the darkness win. A hand closed around her wrist. Lyra turned and found herself face to face with a man who looked exactly like her. Same silver eyes, same dark hair, same features, just sharper, older, carved by time and cruelty. "Hello, daughter," he said. Lyra's blood turned to ice. "You don't remember me." His smile was terrible. "Of course you don't. You were so young when your mother took you. Hid you away like a shameful secret. But I found you eventually. Found you and left you in that cage where you belonged. You..." Lyra's voice broke. "You put me there? I couldn't kill you. Your mother made me promise." His grip tightened. "But I could make sure you never became what you were meant to be. A weapon, a force of nature. Instead, you wasted 17 years in chains, all because she loved you." Lyra's power exploded. Silver and black, light and shadow, everything she'd been holding back for days, unleashed in a single moment. The man who claimed to be her father was thrown back, slamming into the ground, but he rose again, laughing. "There she is," he said. "There's the daughter I should have had." Around them, the world burned. Veilborn tore through soldiers, refugees scattered. Kael fought his way toward Lyra, roaring her name, but the chaos kept them apart. And in the center of it all, Lyra made a choice, not to run, not to hide, but to end this. She reached deep into her power, deeper than she'd ever gone, and touched the darkness that had been calling to her since the moment Kael broke her chains. The void beneath the fortress, the hunger, the rage, and she pulled it all into herself. The transformation was agony. Her body convulsed, her skin split, light pouring from the cracks, her bones reshaped, lengthening, twisting until she wasn't quite human anymore, wasn't quite Veilborn. She was something new, something the world had never seen. And when she opened her eyes, they burned like stars. The fighting stopped. Every Veilborn, every soldier, every refugee turned to stare. Even her father took a step back. "What are you?" he whispered. Lyra didn't answer. She raised her hands and the chasm closed. Not slowly, not gently. In an instant, as if it had never been. The Veilborn who'd climbed from the darkness dissolved, their empty shells crumbling to dust. The ground sealed itself, and the fortress, which had stood for 300 years, began to shake. Cracks spread across the walls, towers swayed, and deep beneath the stone, something ancient and terrible shattered. Vera screamed. The fortress collapsed. Not all at once, but piece by piece, stone by stone, until the symbol of the kingdom's power was nothing but rubble. And standing in the wreckage, glowing like a second sun, was Lyra Voss, the girl who'd been chained in darkness, the mate who'd been called a monster, the Veilborn who'd just unmade the world. The dust settled slowly, like the world itself was holding its breath. Lyra stood in the crater where the fortress gates had been, still glowing, still burning with power that felt too big for her skin. Her father lay crumpled 30 feet away, unconscious but breathing. Around her, soldiers knelt in rubble, staring at the ruins of the only home they'd ever known. And she felt nothing. Not triumph, not guilt, just a hollow exhaustion that went bone deep. "Lyra." Cale's voice cut through the ringing in her ears. She turned, and he was there. Human again, covered in dust and blood that wasn't his, eyes wide with something that looked like fear. But not of her. For her. "Are you—" He stopped, searching for words. "What did you do?" Lyra looked down at her hands. The glow was fading, silver retreating beneath her skin like tide going out. "I don't know." "The fortress, I know." Her voice came out flat. "Wrong. I felt it, everything underneath. They were screaming Kael, all of them, for decades, and no one heard." Kael stepped closer, boots crunching on broken stone. "So you freed them?" "I ended them." Lyra's throat closed. "They were already dead, just hadn't stopped moving yet. I just made it official." Around them, the survivors began to stir. Marcus appeared, limping, supporting a soldier whose leg bent the wrong way. Refugees emerged from the tree line, clutching children, staring at the wreckage with expressions caught between horror and disbelief. And from the rubble, Vera crawled. She looked like she'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. Blood streaked her face, her robes hung in tatters. But her eyes still burned with the same cold fury. "You," she gasped, pointing at Lyra with a shaking hand. "You destroyed it. 300 years of history, our home, our legacy." "Your prison," Lyra interrupted quietly, "built on bones and lies. We protected the kingdom. You buried evidence." Lyra's power flickered just enough to make Vera flinch. "You locked people in cages and called it justice. You let them scream into darkness for decades rather than admit what you'd done." "They were dangerous. They were starving." Lyra's voice cracked. "They were what you made them, just like you tried to make me." Vera opened her mouth, closed it. For the first time since Lyra had met her, the counselor had no response. Kael stepped between them. "It's over, Vera. The fortress is gone. The council's broken. You lost." "Lost?" Vera laughed, brittle and sharp. "Look around, boy. The kingdom center just collapsed. Infrastructure, records, supplies. You think this is a victory? You've doomed us all. Then we'll build something new." Kael's voice was steel. "Something that doesn't require torture chambers to function. You're naive, and you're finished." Kael turned to the crowd of soldiers and refugees and survivors, raised his voice. "The old council is dissolved. As Alpha King, I'm invoking emergency authority. Anyone who wants to rebuild, who wants to be part of something better, stays. Everyone else can leave, but the hunting stops. The purges stop. Today. Silence. Then a soldier stepped forward, young, maybe 18, covered in dust but standing straight. "I'll stay," he said. Another joined him. Then another. Within minutes, half the surviving soldiers had moved to Kael's side, but the other half remained with Veira. The kingdom was splitting in real time. They made camp in the ruins. It wasn't safe. Walls could still collapse. Fires smoldered in the wreckage. But it was defensible. And more importantly, it sent a message. They weren't running. Marcus organized patrols. Kael worked with the refugees to set up shelters. And Lyra sat alone on a fallen pillar, watching her father's unconscious body 20 yards away. The white-haired woman, Lyra had learned her name was Elena, approached with a blanket. "You should rest," Elena said. "Can't." Lyra didn't look up. "Every time I close my eyes, I see them, the ones underneath. They were just like me. But they're at peace now." Elena draped the blanket over Lyra's shoulders. "Because of you. I killed them. You freed them." Elena sat beside her. "There's a difference." Lyra finally looked at her. "How do you know?" "Because I was almost one of them." Elena's voice was quiet. 20 years ago they caught me, dragged me to the fortress. I was headed for the cages when a guard got sloppy, left a door unlocked. I ran. Most didn't. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." Elena's expression hardened. "Be angry, be fierce, but don't be sorry. We've spent too many years apologizing for surviving." Lyra pulled the blanket tighter. "What if I can't control it? What if next time you'll be stronger? You'll know more. You'll do better." Elena stood, joints creaking. "That's how this works. You don't get good at surviving by being perfect. You get good by refusing to give up." She walked away, leaving Lyra alone with thoughts that wouldn't settle. Kael found her an hour later. "We need to talk about him," he said, nodding toward Lyra's father. "What's there to talk about?" "What we're going to do with him." Kael sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "He orchestrated this. Put you in that cage, probably arranged the assassins too." "I know." "So what do you want to do?" Lyra stared at the man who'd given her life, and then tried to bury it. "I want answers. Why he did it. What he wants. What he is. He's a monster." "So am I." Lyra met Kael's eyes. "According to half the kingdom. That's different." "Is it?" Lyra's laugh was bitter. "I just destroyed the fortress, Kael. I killed people. Soldiers who were just following orders. Veilborn who were just trying to survive. I did that." "You stopped a massacre. By starting one." Lyra stood, pacing. "Don't make me a hero. I'm not. I'm just someone who got tired of being afraid." Kael caught her wrist, pulling her back. "Then be that. Be someone who's done with fear, but don't let him," he gestured at her father, "make you think you're like him. You're not." "How do you know?" "Because I've seen you with Mira, with Elena, with every refugee who looks at you like your hope incarnate." Kael's grip tightened. "Monsters don't care about collateral damage. You do. That's the difference." Lyra wanted to believe him, but the power still hummed beneath her skin, dark and hungry, whispering promises she didn't trust. Her father woke at sunset. Lyra sat across from him, Kael and Marcus flanking her, while soldiers kept watch from a distance. The man who'd claimed to be her blood looked smaller now, older, almost fragile, until he smiled. "You exceeded expectations," he said, voice rough but clear. "I wasn't sure you had it in you." "Had what?" Lyra asked flatly. "The strength to embrace what you are." He shifted, chains rattling. Marcus had insisted on restraints. "When I left you in that cage, I thought you'd break, become another empty shell. But you adapted, survived, transformed. You sound proud." "I am." His smile widened. "You're finally becoming what you were meant to be." Kael leaned forward. And what's that? The man's eyes shifted to him. Silver, just like Lyra's, but colder, emptier. A weapon. A force that reshapes the world. Veilborn aren't meant to hide. We're meant to rule. I'm not ruling anything, Lyra said. Not yet. Her father's gaze returned to her. But you will. You felt it when you brought down the fortress. The power, the certainty. It felt good, didn't it? Lyra didn't answer, because he was right. It had felt good. For one terrible, glorious moment, she'd felt unstoppable, and that terrified her more than anything else. Why did you lock me away? She asked quietly. If you wanted me to be a weapon, why cage me? Because your mother made me promise. For the first time, something like regret flickered across his face. She begged me, said you deserved a chance to be something other than what I was. So I gave you darkness instead of death. Figured the cage would kill you slowly, but you're her daughter more than mine. You survived. And now? Now you're free. Now you're powerful. Now you can do what we should have done decades ago. He leaned forward, chains pulling taut. Burn it all down. The wolves, the council, everyone who hunted us. Make them pay. No. The word came out harder than Lyra intended. Her father blinked. What? I said no. Lyra stood. I'm not your weapon. I'm not anyone's weapon, and I'm not interested in revenge. They deserve it, maybe, but I don't. Lyra's power flared just enough to make the chains glow. I spent 17 years being what you made me. A prisoner, a victim. I'm done with that. But I'm also done being what you want me to be. I'm going to figure out who I am without you. Her father's expression hardened. You'll regret this. When they come for you again, and they will, you'll wish you'd listened. Then I'll deal with it. Lyra turned to Marcus. Lock him up, somewhere secure. I'll decide what to do with him later. Marcus nodded, hauling the man to his feet. As they dragged him away, Lyra's father called back. You can't run from what you are, daughter. Sooner or later you'll have to choose, light or darkness, love or power. You can't have both. Watch me, Lyra said. The council, what was left of it, demanded a meeting the next morning. Only 3 counselors had survived the collapse. Vera, Thorn, and a quiet woman named Isla, who'd barely spoken during previous sessions. They gathered in a makeshift tent, surrounded by guards who looked ready to bolt at any moment. Kael entered with Lyra at his side, and the temperature dropped. This is inappropriate, Vera said immediately. Council meetings are closed. The council doesn't exist anymore. Kael interrupted. You want to rebuild? Fine. But it happens in the open, with witnesses. No more secret chambers. No more buried crimes. Thorn's jaw worked. You're making a mistake. The mistake was trusting you. Kael's voice was cold. All of you. You built a kingdom on mass graves and called it civilization. That ends now. And what replaces it? Vera demanded. Chaos? Anarchy? You've destroyed our infrastructure, our government, our... Your lie, Lyra said quietly. All eyes turned to her. Everything you built was a lie, she continued. The purge, the laws, the justifications. You told yourselves you were protecting the kingdom, but you were just protecting your power. That's not... I saw them. Lyra's voice hardened. The people you locked beneath the fortress, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, left to rot because acknowledging them meant acknowledging what you'd done. Isla spoke for the first time. We didn't know. Lyra turned to her. What? We didn't know they were still alive. Isla's hands shook. The records said they'd been executed, humanely, after the purge. That's what we were taught. That's what we believed. Then someone lied to you, Marcus said. Question is, who? Silence. Vera's face had gone ashen. Thorn? The old counselor wouldn't meet her eyes. Thorn, Vera repeated, voice sharp. Did you know? It was necessary, he said finally. The executions would have caused riots. Divided the kingdom. Keeping them contained was cleaner. Cleaner. Lyra's laugh was hollow. You starved people in darkness for decades and called it clean. I did what had to be done. You created the exact monster you claimed to fear, Kyle snarled. Those Veil-born who climbed out of the chasm, they weren't born that way. You made them. Through torture, starvation, isolation, you turned survivors into weapons and then blamed them for it. Thorn stood. I won't be lectured by a boy who's barely held the crown. Kale moved faster than Lyra had ever seen him. One moment, he was across the tent. The next, he had Thorn by the throat, lifted off the ground. That boy, Kyle said softly, is the only thing standing between you and a very angry crowd of people you tried to exterminate. I'd suggest you remember that. He dropped Thorn, who collapsed, gasping. Isla stood slowly. What do you want from us? Kyle turned to her. The truth. All of it. Every record, every order, every name of everyone involved in the purge. And then you're going to help me build something better. And if we refuse, then you're complicit. Kale's eyes blazed. And I'll treat you exactly like I'm treating Thorn. Isla looked at Vera, at Thorn, then back at Kale. I'll help, she said quietly. I can't undo what was done, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again. Vera said nothing, but her silence spoke volumes. The refugees integrated slowly. Some soldiers refused to work alongside Veilborn. They left, heading for the outer territories, taking their loyalty with them. But others stayed, curious, cautious, willing to try. Elena organized the Veilborn into work crews. They cleared rubble, built shelters, helped the wounded, and slowly, painfully slowly, the two groups began to overlap. Lyra watched it happen from a distance, afraid that her presence would shatter the fragile peace. But Mira had other ideas. The little girl appeared one afternoon, dragging a soldier by the hand, a young woman who looked terrified. Tell her, Mira demanded. The soldier swallowed hard. I wanted to say thank you for saving us. When the fortress fell, you could have let it crush everyone, but you closed the chasm first, gave people time to run. Lyra blinked. I didn't. You did. The soldier's voice was firm. I saw it. You turned the power inward, took the collapse into yourself instead of letting it spread. My brother's alive because of you. Mira beamed. See? You're a hero. I'm really not, Lyra said, but the soldier shook her head. Maybe you don't see it yet, but we do. She walked away, leaving Lyra standing there with a strange warmth spreading through her chest. Mira tugged her hand. Can I show you something? Sure. The girl led her to a section of ruins where the other children had gathered. They'd built something from broken stones and twisted metal, a crude sculpture, maybe 3 feet tall, that vaguely resembled a person. It's you, Mira said proudly. We made it so we remember. Remember what? The day someone finally fought back. Mira's silver eyes were bright. And won. Lyra knelt, bringing herself to eye level. We haven't won yet. But we didn't lose. Mira's smile was fierce. That's new. Kale found her that evening, sitting on the same fallen pillar. They're calling you the Breaker, he said, settling beside her. Lyra groaned. Please tell me that's not my official title. Could be worse. Marcus suggested Fortress Killer. Despite everything, Lyra laughed. That's terrible. I know. Kael's smile faded. But it's working. The refugees, the soldiers, they're starting to see you as something other than a threat. They're wrong. Are they? Kael took her hand. You could have let the fortress fall on everyone. You didn't. You could have let your father manipulate you into revenge. You didn't. At every turn, you've chosen the harder path, the kinder path. That doesn't make me good. It makes you human. Kael squeezed her fingers, which is more than most people in power can say. Lyra leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. What happens now? Now we rebuild. Not the fortress, that stays down, but the kingdom, something new, Something that doesn't require dungeons to function. The outer territories won't accept it. Vera's people won't either. Then we'll deal with them. Kale's arm wrapped around her waist. Together. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. Kale pressed a kiss to her temple. You're not alone anymore, Lara. You haven't been since the moment I broke those chains. Sometimes I wish you'd left them on. Liar. Lyra smiled despite herself. Yeah, okay, liar. The first real challenge came a week later. A delegation from the Southern Territories arrived, led by a grizzled alpha named Garrett. He brought 50 warriors, all armed, all hostile. We heard what happened, Garrett said, standing in the middle of the ruins with his arms crossed. Fortress destroyed. Council disbanded. Veilborn walking around like they own the place. They're citizens, Kael said evenly. Same as anyone else. They're abominations, Garrett spat. And you're a fool for harboring them. Lyra stepped forward. Then you're welcome to leave. Garrett's eyes narrowed. You're the one, aren't you? The breaker. The monster who brought down 300 years of history. That's me. Lyra's power flickered, just enough to cast shadows. And if you're here to start trouble, I'll show you exactly what else I can break. The warriors behind Garrett shifted nervously, but the old alpha held his ground. You think you scare me, girl? I think you're smart enough to recognize a threat. Lyra took another step forward. I don't want to fight you. I don't want to fight anyone, but I will if you force me to. And you've seen what happens when I fight. Garrett studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he laughed. You've got guts, I'll give you that. He turned to Kael. Your mate's insane, but I respect that. Question is, what are you offering? Kael blinked. Offering? You want us to accept this new kingdom? This alliance with Veilborn? Then what's in it for us? Garrett's expression turned shrewd. The Southern Territories have been ignored for decades. Resources go to the fortress. Trade routes favor the inner circles. If you want our support, that changes. Kael glanced at Marcus, who shrugged. Fair enough, Sauce, Kael said. New trade agreements, equal resource distribution, and a seat at the table when decisions get made. 2-seat, Garrett countered, and veto power on anything that affects the Southern Territories specifically. 1 seat, Kael said, and consultation rights. No veto. But we listen before we decide. Garrett considered. And if we don't like what we hear? Then you argue your case, same as everyone else. Kael's voice was firm. No special treatment, but no exclusion either. The old alpha studied him, then nodded. Deal. But I'm watching you, boy. You screw this up, and we're gone. Understood. Garrett turned to leave, then paused, looked back at Lyra. You really think you can pull this off? He asked. Unite wolves and Veilborn? Build something that doesn't collapse in a year? Lyra met his gaze. I survived 17 years in a cage designed to kill me. I think I can handle this. Garrett's smile was sharp. Then welcome to politics, Breaker. It's worse than any dungeon. He left, warriors following, and Lyra released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. That went better than expected, Marcus said. That was terrifying, Lyra corrected. Wait until the other territories arrive, Kael said grimly. Garrett's the friendly one. Us. But they didn't arrive with armies. They arrived with questions. Over the next 2 weeks, delegations from across the kingdom trickled in. Some came curious, some came hostile, but all of them came looking for the same thing. Answers. What happened to the fortress? Why did the council fall? What's the plan going forward? Kael answered most of the political questions. Marcus handled logistics. Ela, who'd defected fully from Vera's camp, managed records and resources. And Lyra? Lyra became the symbol. She didn't ask for it, didn't want it, but every time a new delegation arrived, they wanted to see her. The Veilborn who'd survived the rite, the breaker who'd destroyed the fortress, the mate who'd changed everything. Some looked at her with fear, others with hope, a few with calculation, already planning how to use her for their own ends. But they all looked. And slowly, the story began to shift. She wasn't the monster anymore. She was the girl who'd fought back and won, the refugee who'd become a queen, the darkness that had chosen light. And in a kingdom built on violence and fear, that was revolutionary. The breakthrough came on a cold morning 3 weeks after the collapse. Lyra was helping Elena organize supply runs when a commotion erupted near the camp's edge. She ran toward it, heart pounding, expecting another attack. Instead, she found a crowd. And in the center, little Mira stood holding hands with a wolf soldier, the same young man who'd been the first to join Kael's side. "What's going on?" Lyra asked. Mira beamed. "He asked me to show him how to do the thing, the light thing. And I did. And it worked." Lyra stared. What?" The soldier stepped forward, looking sheepish. "My sister was Veil-born. They took her during the purge. I was too young to stop them. But I always wondered—" He swallowed hard. "I wondered if I could have learned, if I could have protected her." "So Mira showed you," Lyra said slowly. "She tried. And something happened." He held up his hand, and for just a moment, a flicker of silver light danced across his palm. "It's not much, but it's there." Lyra's breath caught. Because if he could do it, if a wolf could tap into Veil-born power, then the divide wasn't biological. It was learned. And anything learned could be unlearned. She turned to Elena. "Get Kael and Isla and anyone else who wants to see this." Within an hour, half the camp had gathered, and Mira, small, brave, fierce little Mira, taught them. Not everyone could do it. Not everyone wanted to try. But enough succeeded that by sunset, the camp buzzed with a new energy. Wolves experimenting with light, Veil-born teaching instead of hiding, and in the center of it all, a child who'd decided the old rules didn't matter anymore. Kael found Lyra watching from a distance, tears streaming down her face. "This is it," she whispered. "This is how it changes." Kael pulled her close. "You did this." "No, Mira did." Lyra wiped her eyes. "I just didn't stop her." "That's leadership." Lyra laughed. "That's called getting out of the way." "Same thing." They stood there watching the camp transform, and for the first time since Kael had broken her chains, Lyra felt something she'd thought was impossible. Peace. It wouldn't last. She knew that. Vera was still out there gathering supporters. The outer territories were still skeptical, and her father's words echoed in her mind. You can't have both. But maybe he was wrong. Maybe she didn't have to choose between light and darkness. Maybe she could be both. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what the kingdom needed. The kingdom needed her to be both. But first, it needed to survive the night. The attack came 6 weeks after the fortress fell, on a moonless night when the camp was spread thin. Lyra woke to Marcus shaking her shoulder, his face grim in the lamplight. "They're here," he said. "Veyra's army, 200 strong, maybe more, coming from the west." Lyra was on her feet instantly. "Where's Kael?" "Already mobilizing defenses. He sent me to get you." Marcus handed her a cloak. "We're outnumbered 3-1. Most of our fighters are refugees who've never held a weapon. This is going to get ugly." Lyra followed him outside, where chaos had already taken root. People ran in every direction, parents grabbing children, soldiers strapping on whatever armor they could find, Veil-born clustering together with fear bright in their silver eyes. In the distance, torches approached like a swarm of angry fireflies. Kael stood on a pile of rubble, shouting orders. When he saw Lyra, relief flashed across his face. "They're not here to negotiate," he said as she climbed up beside him. "Veyra sent a messenger an hour ago. She's calling this a cleansing. Says she's taking back the kingdom from corruption. Meaning us. Meaning you." Kael's jaw tightened. "She's branded you as a usurper, a dark force that's possessed the Alpha King and turned him against his people. Half the outer territories bought it." Lyra stared at the approaching torches. "So we fight? We don't have a choice." Kael grabbed her hand. "But Lyra, if this goes bad, if it looks like we're going to lose, I need you to run, take the children, get them out." "I'm not running." "Lyra, I spent 17 years running from what I am." She met his eyes. "I'm done. Whatever happens tonight, we face it together." Kael looked like he wanted to argue, Instead, he pulled her close and kissed her, hard, desperate, tasting like goodbye. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing gold. Then let's make them regret ever coming here. Well, the battle started with fire. Veyra's forces didn't bother with warnings or demands. They just lit their arrows, drew their bows, and sent a wave of flame arcing into the camp. Tents ignited. Wooden structures caught and blazed. Screams filled the air as people scrambled to escape the inferno. Lyra's power erupted instinctively. Silver light exploded from her palms, forming a dome over the section where the children had been sleeping. Arrows struck the barrier and disintegrated, reduced to ash before they could land. But maintaining it took concentration, and Lyra could already feel the strain pulling at her. "I can't hold this forever," she gasped. "You don't have to." Elena appeared beside her, along with a dozen other Veilborn. "We'll take it. You go deal with Veyra." "Elena? Go." Elena's hands joined Lyra's, silver light intertwining. "We've got this. You've got her." Lyra hesitated for only a moment. Then she ran. Kael had already shifted, a massive black wolf tearing through enemy lines with Marcus at his side in human form, wielding a sword like he'd been born with it. Lyra followed, her power clearing a path, not destroying but pushing, creating space where there was none. And there, at the center of Veyra's forces, the counselor sat on a white horse like she was attending a parade. Lyra stopped 20 feet away. "Call it off!" Veyra's smile was cold. "Why would I do that?" "Because you're going to lose." "Am I?" Veyra gestured to the chaos around them. "Your camp is burning, your people are scattered, and you're exhausted. I can see it in your eyes. How much longer can you keep this up?" Lyra's power flickered, and she hated that Veyra was right. She'd been using it constantly for weeks. Healing, building, protecting. She was running on fumes, but she couldn't show it. "Long enough to make you regret this," Lyra said. Veyra laughed. "Brave words from a girl who doesn't even know what she is. Do you know what happens when a Veilborn burns through all their power? When they push too far?" "I'll find out. They break." Veyra's smile widened. Mind, body, soul, everything shatters. You'll become exactly what your father is, a hollow shell filled with hunger and rage. Is that really what you want? "What I want," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest, "is for you to stop killing people just because you're afraid of change." "I'm not afraid." "You're terrified." Lyra took a step forward, terrified that if people see Veilborn and wolves working together, they'll realize the purge was wrong, that you were wrong, and you can't handle that. Veyra's expression twisted. "You know nothing. I know you built a kingdom on lies. I know you lock children in cages rather than admit your mistakes. I know you're so desperate to hold on to power that you'd burn everything down rather than share it." Lyra's power flared, brighter now. "But I also know you've already lost, because even if you kill me tonight, the idea won't die. People have seen another way, and once they've seen it, you can't make them unsee it." For a moment, Veyra said nothing. Then she raised her hand, and the sky split open. Lyra had been wrong about one thing. Veyra hadn't brought just soldiers. She'd brought shadow creatures. They poured through the rift in the sky like oil, formless and wrong, with too many limbs and mouths that opened in places mouths shouldn't be. They shrieked, a sound that felt like nails on glass, and descended on the camp. Lyra's stomach dropped. "What did you do?" she screamed. Veyra's smile was triumphant. "I made a deal. With something older than this kingdom, older than the purge. It promised me power to cleanse the corruption. All I had to do was open a door. You summoned demons. I summoned justice." Veyra's eyes blazed with fanatical certainty. "And they'll erase you and every abomination you've protected." The shadow creatures hit the ground and started killing. They didn't discriminate. Soldiers, refugees, Veilborn, wolves, they tore through everyone with the same mindless hunger. Lyra watched in horror as a creature grabbed a young soldier and simply absorbed him, pulling him into its mass until nothing remained. Kael shifted back to human, blood streaming from a dozen wounds. "Lyra, what are those things?" "I don't know, but they're not stopping." She turned to Veyra. "Call them off." "I can't." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Veyra's face. They were supposed to target only Veilborn. They're targeting everyone. Lyra's power surged. You opened a door you can't close. Veyra's horse reared, panicked by the creature swarming closer. The counselor fell, hitting the ground hard, and scrambled back as a shadow creature loomed over her. Lyra moved without thinking. She threw herself between Veyra and the creature, power blazing, and caught its strike on a shield of silver light. The impact drove her to her knees, but she held. Run! She shouted at Veyra. The counselor stared at her, eyes wide with shock. Why? Because I'm not you. Lyra's voice cracked. Now move! Veyra ran, and Lyra faced the creature alone. It was like fighting smoke. Every strike passed through it, every barrier it simply reformed around. And all the while it pressed closer, mouths opening and closing, hungrier than anything Lyra had ever felt. Behind her, the camp was being overrun. She could hear the screams, the roar of Kael's wolf, Elena's voice shouting orders, little Mira crying for her mother. And she realized something. This was the choice her father had warned her about. Light or darkness, love or power. But he'd been wrong. It wasn't a choice between them. It was a choice to embrace both. Lyra stopped fighting. The creature lunged, and instead of blocking it, Lyra opened herself completely. Let her power, all of it, silver and black, light and shadow, pour out without restraint. The creature hit her. And something impossible happened. It didn't consume her. She consumed it. The darkness flooded into her, cold and furious and wrong. It tried to tear her apart from the inside, tried to hollow her out the way it had done to so many others. But Lyra didn't fight it. She embraced it. And then she changed it. The darkness met her light, and instead of destroying each other, they merged, transformed, became something that had never existed before. Balance. Pure, perfect, terrifying balance. Lyra's body lifted off the ground, glowing so bright it hurt to look at her. And from her outstretched hands, light exploded. Not silver, not black, but something in between, a color that had no name. It washed over the battlefield like a wave, and where it touched the shadow creatures, they didn't die. They changed. Their formless bodies solidified, their mindless hunger faded, and one by one, they collapsed into ash that glittered in the firelight. The rift in the sky sealed shut with a sound like thunder, and Lyra fell. Kael caught her before she hit the ground. No, Lyra, stay with me. She was so cold, every part of her felt like it had been dipped in ice, but when she opened her eyes, she could see clearly for the first time in her life. I'm okay, she whispered. You're not, you just... Kael's hands shook as he checked her for injuries. What did you do? What I had to. Lyra managed a weak smile. Turns out my father was wrong. I can have both. Around them, the battlefield was silent. The fires had gone out. The shadow creatures were gone. And on both sides, Veyra's forces and Kael's, people stared at Lyra with expressions ranging from terror to awe. So Marcus appeared, breathing hard. Is she alive, Kael said. She's alive. Good, because we have a situation. Marcus jerked his head toward Veyra's army. They're waiting for orders, and their commander is currently having what looks like an existential crisis. Lyra forced herself to sit up. Every muscle screamed in protest, but she locked her jaw and stood. Kael tried to support her, but she waved him off. I need to do this alone, she said quietly. Lyra, trust me. Kael held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Lyra walked across the battlefield on shaking legs. Veyra knelt in the mud, staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Her perfect robes were torn. Her silver hair hung loose. And when she looked up at Lyra, there was nothing left of the imperious counselor who'd tried to have her executed, just an old woman who'd made a terrible mistake. You saved me, Veyra said hoarsely. Why? Lyra knelt beside her. Because killing you wouldn't have solved anything. It would have just proved you were right about me. I was wrong. Veyra's voice broke. About everything. The purge. The cages. You. She looked at the ash glittering on the ground. I opened that door thinking I was saving the kingdom, but I almost destroyed it. Yeah.
Lyra's throat was tight. You did. So what now? Vera met her eyes. You execute me. Exile me? I deserve it. You do, Lyra agreed, but that's not my call to make. She stood, offering her hand. It's theirs. Vera followed her gaze to where the combined forces of both armies waited, wolves and Veilborn and humans standing side by side because they'd just fought together to survive. Slowly, Vera took Lyra's hand and stood. They held a council the next morning, not in a secret chamber or a fortress throne room, but in the open, where everyone could see and hear. Representatives from every group gathered, soldiers, refugees, territorial delegates, even the children who'd taught wolves to make light. And at the center, Lyra stood beside Kael. We're done with the old ways, Kael announced. No more councils that operate in shadows. No more laws that protect some at the expense of others. From now on, decisions get made here, in front of everyone, with input from everyone. That's chaos, someone shouted. That's democracy, Isla corrected. And it's messy, but it's better than the alternative. Garrett stepped forward. And what about her? He nodded at Lyra. What's her role in this new kingdom? Kael turned to Lyra. That's her choice. All eyes swiveled to her. Lyra took a breath. I'm not a leader. I'm not a politician. I'm just someone who got tired of being afraid. She scanned the crowd, meeting as many eyes as she could. But I'm someone who knows what it's like to be locked away, silenced, treated as less than human. And I can promise you this, I will fight to make sure that never happens again. To anyone. As what? Elena asked. A warrior? A symbol? As a bridge. Lyra's voice strengthened. Between wolves and Veilborn, between light and darkness, between what we were and what we can become, if you'll have me. Silence. Then Mira's small voice rang out. I vote yes. Laughter rippled through the crowd, uncertain but real, and one by one, hands raised. Not everyone. Some delegates walked away, refusing to be part of what they saw as corruption. Vera stood but didn't raise her hand, just bowed her head in what might have been acceptance or shame. But enough voted yes that when Kael counted, the result was clear. Lyra Voss, once a prisoner in darkness, had just been elected to help lead a kingdom. The rebuilding took months. They didn't restore the fortress. Instead, they built something new on the ruins. A structure with no walls, no dungeons, no secret chambers. Just open halls where anyone could enter and speak. Trade routes reopened. The territories sent resources and received representation in return. And slowly, painfully slowly, wolves and Veilborn began to live side by side. It wasn't perfect. There were fights, protests, people who refused to let go of old hatreds. Vera accepted exile rather than face trial, disappearing into the Western territories with a handful of loyalists. And Lyra's father remained locked in a secure location, a constant reminder of what she could become if she lost her way. But there were also victories. Mira started a school where children learned to harness both wolf and Veilborn abilities. Elena became the head of refugee integration, and Marcus, steady, sarcastic Marcus, became Kael's chief advisor, the voice of reason when passion threatened to overwhelm judgment. As for Lyra and Kael, they learned to navigate their roles together. She was never comfortable with the title, never stopped flinching when people called her queen, but she showed up anyway, listened to disputes, made hard decisions. And every night, she came back to the small room she shared with Kael and collapsed into his arms, exhausted but whole. You're getting better at this, Kael said one evening, 6 months after the battle. They sat on their balcony, watching the sun set over the new construction. At what? Lyra asked. Politics? At believing you deserve to be here. Lyra was quiet for a moment. I still don't know if I do. That's why you're good at it. Kael pulled her closer. You never forget what it felt like to be powerless. So you make sure no one else has to feel that way. Lots of people still do. Yeah, but fewer than before. And that matters. Lyra leaned into him, watching the workers below finish the last section of the new hall. Do you ever regret it? Walking away from your coronation, Choosing me? Kale was quiet for so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, every day. Lyra's chest tightened. I regret that I didn't do it sooner, Kyle continued, that I didn't question the cages earlier, that I didn't tear the fortress down years ago. But choosing you? Trusting my instincts over their rules? He turned her to face him. That's the only thing I've ever done that I'm completely sure was right. Lyra kissed him, long and slow and grateful for a man who'd seen her at her worst and decided she was worth saving anyway. When they pulled apart, Kale's eyes were bright. There's something I want to show you.
He led her to the section of ruins where the old dungeons had been. Lyra's steps faltered. She hadn't been back here since the fortress fell. Couldn't bring herself to face the place where she'd spent 17 years of her life. Kael, I don't think... Trust me, he said quietly. They descended into what had once been darkness, but someone had installed torches now, lighting the way. And at the bottom, where Lyra's cage had been, she found something impossible. A garden. Not flowers. They wouldn't grow this deep. But bioluminescent plants that glowed soft silver in the darkness. Vines covered the walls where chains had hung, and in the center, where the stone pillar had stood, there was now a monument. A simple plaque engraved with names. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Everyone who'd died in the cages. Everyone the kingdom had forgotten. Lyra's knees gave out. Kael caught her, holding her while she sobbed. For the people who hadn't survived. For the years she'd lost. For the girl she'd been before the cage. Elena organized it, Kael said quietly. She wanted to make sure they were remembered, that what happened here never got buried again. Lyra traced one of the names with shaking fingers. Did we do enough? Will any of this actually matter? I don't know, Kael admitted, but we're trying, and that's more than anyone did before. Lyra stood, wiping her eyes. I want to add something. What? A light. She raised her hand and silver power, steady, now controlled, coalesced in her palm. So this place is never dark again. She pressed it into the wall above the monument, and it stuck, glowing like a small sun. A permanent reminder that even in the deepest darkness, light could exist. They stood there for a long time, honoring the dead and the survivors in equal measure. And when they finally climbed back into the sunlight, Lyra felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness. She had never forgive what had been done to her and the others. But acceptance. She was a survivor, a fighter, a bridge between worlds, and she would make sure that light kept burning. 1 year after the fortress fell, they held the first open gathering. Every territory sent representatives. Every faction had a voice. And for 3 days they argued and debated and slowly, painfully slowly, hammered out agreements that no one loved but everyone could live with. On the final night, Kael stood before the assembled crowd and made an announcement. We're establishing a new tradition, he said. Every year, on the anniversary of the fortress's fall, we gather, not to celebrate its destruction, but to remember what we built from the ruins, and to remind ourselves why we can't go back. He turned to Lyra. My mate will say a few words. Lyra stepped forward, heart pounding. She still hated public speaking, probably always would, but she'd learned that some things were worth being uncomfortable for. A year ago, I was a prisoner, she said. I'd spent most of my life in darkness, convinced I was a monster, convinced I deserved the cage. She scanned the crowd. Some of you still think I'm a monster. And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe we all are, a little bit. Maybe that's what it means to be powerful, to carry the capacity for both creation and destruction. She paused. But I've learned something this year. Being a monster isn't about what power you have. It's about what you choose to do with it. And every day we get to choose. Fear or courage. Division or unity. The cage or the light. Her power flared, just for a moment, bright enough to make shadows dance. I choose light. Not because I'm not afraid, but because I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. And I hope, I really, truly hope, that you'll choose it too. The applause started slowly, uncertain, but it built, rolling through the crowd like thunder. Not everyone joined in, but enough did, enough to matter. Late that night, Lyra found Mira sitting on the wall, staring at the stars. "Can't sleep?" Lyra asked, settling beside her. Mira shook her head. "I was thinking." "About what?" "About before. When we lived in the woods, when we were scared all the time." Mira's silver eyes reflected the starlight. "Do you think we'll ever go back to that?" Lyra wanted to lie, wanted to promise that everything would be fine forever, but she'd learned that hope without honesty was just delusion. "Maybe," she said quietly. "People forget. They get comfortable and stop paying attention. And when that happens, the same old hatreds can creep back in." "So what do we do?" "We remember." Lyra put her arm around the girl's shoulders. "We tell our stories. We make sure the people who come after us know what it costs to build this, and we teach them to fight for it." Mira leaned into her. "Will you teach me to fight like you?" "I'll teach you to survive like me," Lyra corrected. "Fighting's just part of it. The bigger part is knowing when to fight and when to build, when to push back and when to let go. Think you can handle that?" Mira nodded seriously. "I can try. That's all any of us can do." They sat there together, the monster and the child, watching stars wheel overhead in a sky that belonged to both of them now. And in that moment, Lyra understood what her father had never grasped. Power wasn't about domination. It was about choice. The choice to break chains instead of forging them. The choice to build bridges instead of walls. The choice to be both fierce and kind, strong and gentle, dark and light. The choice to survive and to help others do the same. Below them, the new kingdom sprawled, imperfect, messy, loud with arguments and hope in equal measure. It wouldn't last forever. Nothing did. But it was real. It was theirs, and they'd fought like hell to build it. Kael appeared, climbing up to join them. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere." He stopped, seeing them together. "Am I interrupting?" "No." Lyra smiled, reaching for his hand. "Come here." He settled on her other side, and the three of them sat in comfortable silence. A king who'd chosen instinct over tradition, a girl who'd survived the impossible, and a child who represented everything they'd fought for. The future, imperfect and uncertain, but finally free. "Thank you," Mira said suddenly. Lyra looked down at her. "For what?" "For not giving up." The girl's voice was small but certain. "When you could have run, when it would have been easier, you stayed and you fought, and now I get to be here, safe, learning, not hiding." Lyra's throat closed. "You're welcome. And thank you," she added, looking at Kael, "for being crazy enough to love her." Kael laughed. "That's the easiest thing I've ever done." They stayed there until the stars faded and dawn broke over the kingdom they'd built from ruins and hope and sheer, stubborn refusal to accept the world as it was. And when the sun rose, golden and bright and full of promise, Lyra Voss, who'd once been chained in darkness, stood in its light, not as a victim, not as a monster, but as herself. Scarred, strong, whole. And finally, after 17 years of cages and fear and survival, she was home.